Hello and welcome back here in the auditorium of x-dream events. This is a session with a very special topic because we spoke about this topic already in multiple other sessions. So I'm very thankful that we can have this session right now about transcription and translations. Here I'm connected with John from Concept 7, Share Stories from the Netherlands. We have Erwan from Mediawen, from France, Paris. We also have Fereidoon, very early morning call with you from the US, California. And here with me in the studio is Oliver Meurer from Flowworks. Let's jump right away into our today's topic. Erwan, you as our specialist for transcription and translations. Mediawen is a company that does such automatic transcription and translation software and services. Could you please introduce us a little bit into the topic? Can you help us to understand what that exactly means?
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Hi, everybody. So, transcription and translation are two very different tasks. Transcription, automated transcription, it's to transform a sound into a text. Then when you have an accurate text, it's to transform this source text into a target language, in another language. So it appeared, it's not a new topic, it appeared during the Cold War after with Russia to recognize the sound and to transcript conversations. And it was really at the turn of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, it really improved with natural language processing and neural networks.
So that means in the past, how was it done when there was no AI existing?
Yeah, so before it was until the 90s, because if you have a low accuracy under, let's say, 60, 70%, it takes more time to correct the transcription than to go from scratch. So before, it was humans doing the transcription and the translation. The translation is still highly made by translators, and the automation helps to do some low level, some low quality. On transcription, we see an improvement pretty amazing. Mediawen International has been created 6 years ago, and we see on the fly the improvement of the quality in more and more languages, even with accents, even with a different pace of speech. And the rate is a WER, the word error rate. So we can measure the difference between a fully accurate transcription and the machine. And when it's as low as 0, the quality is as high. So, yeah, the improvement is really amazing, but it all depends, and we'll talk about it during this session, about the quality of the source file, of the sound recording. And yeah, there's a lot to think about when you want an automated process, optimal automated process. You have to think really wisely on the source and the sound recording.
So before we look deeper into that topic, John, I would like to ask you as our specialist for publishing, for especially social media activities and websites and so on. Why is subtitling that important in social media?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important because social media is all about reaching people, connecting to people and interacting to people. And if you have an audience that you want to reach out to, then it's pretty nice that they understand what you're telling them, what your story is. If that is, for instance, in German, and you're talking German to somebody who is a native Spanish speaker, then he or she might understand 10, 20%. But when you have a subtitling on it, you actually, people read and hear at the same time, so you get an increase of what is understood. Then if you add translations to it, then you have the trustworthiness of the native tongue that you hear in the video. So you hear somebody telling in their native tongue what they're saying, and then you read what the translation is. So you believe what he's saying, it's authentic, but you also understand what is told. And it's not only social media, because you might know the CGA 2.1a compliancy note that is about usability. Governmental sites, governmental publications, semi-governmental organizations, they all have the obligation to add tooling for viewers, for their audience, to understand what you're saying. That means you have to provide something where they can understand what you're telling in a video. That might be synchronization, or that might be subtitling and captioning. Or this might be a transcription that you can read besides the video. But all these kind of things are not voluntarily anymore. In several European countries, it is obligatory to have this in place. So also, if they want to communicate on social media, but also on their own website, and that is usually a Vimeo or a YouTube integration. So that's social blending in communication strategy.
Yeah, as you just mentioned it, we now thrown the topic about transcriptions and subtitling into the same pot, but I could assume that transcription does make sense to be used totally outside that subtitling topic, for instance, for metadata generation, that can be used then outside the video, still on the website or social media.
Yes, for sure. Because if you have a transcription, actually the basics of your text for your website or your search engine optimized words are already available. You can only optimize it, and you don't have to think about your story. So that's an obvious one. And there is also the other thing. How much video do you watch, Stefan, with audio on during the day? Most of it is in work time between the calls, that you want to read the subtitles in preparation, and you don't want to disturb anyone else. So this is also demanding proper subtitling and captioning, and the transcription that offers you a lot of possibilities to automatically generate keywords on which you want to be found in your content, in your story. So it's also for search engine optimization or for findability and for archiving, very useful to add this transcription to your search engine optimization.
Yeah, let me ask Oliver, who's our specialist definitely for media asset management. We spoke about this topic the last days various times, and that's what the reason why we've pointed to that session. How would you make use of transcription within media asset management?
Well, if we're talking about the making sure that you have a structured and meaningful asset collection, which is basically where your value is, the more you know about it, the better, quite simply. So if you know what text is being told, or what scenes you have, what type of music is being played, etc., that's all very valuable information. Simply put, John already mentioned it in the sense of search engine optimization. If I know what the person in my video is saying, I can make that readily findable in the public space, but for sure also in your internal environment. So within the archive, if I'm looking for a specific, let's say, technical term, and I'm an industrial company, I want to find all the videos that include that specific term. That might not be in the written metadata, but it'll be in the text that's being talked about, and that's actually why you're looking for the clip.
Do you see a use case as well in archive digitalization? So means all tapes that shall be recovered. So from the last 60 years, as we are often asked for by broadcasters, especially. Or?
Yeah, that's a very good use case actually, because the problem there is that there probably isn't that much other metadata readily available. It maybe dates, it predates even Axel, so there might be notes on that. But do you still have them? Do you know where they went? Maybe you don't know anything about it. You literally just have the tape and it says something on the box, but that's it. You don't know what's inside. So instead of spending the money on having somebody watch the entire thing and really log everything, including all the time codes, just run it through the machine, and at least it gives you some information. It's better than nothing. So the older the stock is, the less information exists around it, the more important and the more beneficial the AI becomes.
Yeah, so as this session is mainly about the on-the-fly generation of subtitles or transcriptions and translation services, Erwan, I would like to ask you, how is that going to happen? How can something that was recorded on a smartphone be transcribed by back-end services?
Well, the importance of the sound recording, of the quality of the recording is really crucial. And this is an attention to have when you film with your smartphone. We just have one channel to use. So the background, the clarity of the sound is essential to optimize this workflow. The transcription, the time lapse is pretty fast, and it's getting faster and faster. Now to have on-the-fly transcription and translation, we still have small delays. So it can't be it can't be totally live. Transcription is getting closer, but then it depends on the quality you want to give to your audience. I mean, the accuracy can be 90 or even 95% accurate. If you have one wrong spelling of a word or family name, it can ruin the experience. So at Mediawen, we are more in favor of using AI, so-called artificial intelligence. By the way, natural language processing is really the core of artificial intelligence. It's really at the heart with speech-to-text, machine translation, and then another topic that we won't address today, but text-to-speech, how to transform a text into dubbing, into a speech. On transcription and translation, if you translate automatically a non-fully accurate transcription, you may have double errors. So you have to be careful, and we are in favor of a mix between the machine and humans, and you can correct on the fly. Yes, you can. You have almost a fully accurate transcription, you do small corrections, it's validated, then you process the automated translation. But again, before publishing, we are in favor for corporate, for professional use of a validation, a human validation.
So John, let's come back to the social media topic, what's often also somehow related to apps. How can a Mojo app, so what means a mobile journalism app, make use out of transcription and translation services?
Yeah, it would be, I totally agree with what Erwan said. Yeah, the human factor is very much determining the end quality. But what you see with apps for mobile journalism is that you usually have the one that is, for instance, voice-overing or is creating the audio in the video story, usually is the one that also knows what it's all about. So he can pretty fast, if it's available, correct and put that human factor into the transcripted and maybe in some cases translated text files. So what do you need in a Mojo is that you have the preparation of subtitling in your app. And if your app allows that, you can edit it on the fly. And if it can be merged in the app to that video story, then you would have a client-side solution for adding captions on your video and then publish it right away from your app. We have tried it out with some apps and simulated it. We haven't got the real thing yet available, but it's going to be soon. If you have this available, you might lower your editing time to get something published on social media with captions by a factor of 7. It takes 7 times more time editing and adding captions on a desktop while you have created a video on your phone, just by importing the file to your desktop, having it distill the text, then place it in a video editing tool. That takes about 7 times more time. So, for instance, a video with a scoop on news of 1.5 minutes would take 10, 12 minutes to edit on the desktop, and then you have to publish it. Not yet. So this is something that would really benefit journalists, influencers, vloggers, brand marketeers that create event stories, if they could do that while they're on the way in the bus back from the event that they just recorded. Wouldn't it be great to have it published and go home and go eat your dinner instead of going behind your desktop and edit it quickly so that you have it out there?
How do you deal with the wrong transcriptions when the content is sent out from the mobile phone and also then received in the mobile phone app? Would the user do the corrections there then?
Yeah, that would work for that the user is capable of understanding. So, for instance, I'm a Dutchman. So if I have an audio file transcripted and sent back to me as captions to merge with my video, and I disclose it on my app, what we are going to do in a text file that I can click on and correct in the app, then that would be possible for me to have Dutch captions in my Dutch spoken audio file. If I want to translate to, for instance, French or Spanish, I do understand hola and Teresa, but the rest is unknown for me. So I have to trust that the translation is 100% correct. And therefore, this is something that is a desperate need of native correction. So you can't actually do that on the fly at this point, I heard Erwan say. But you can come a long way, because if I get the English text back, I think I'm good enough in English to correct, and what I'm not sure of, to get that out of the captions so that I have no errors. It might not be complete, but I have no errors in my video subtitling in English. I would trust myself to do that. So this is what you can offer to a user in a use case where it needs, for instance, native tongue translated to English captions, because a lot of people speak well enough English to add this to the video story that they want to share as a news item, because the urge to get it out as first is the most important thing in news. Getting it out first.
Yeah, we'll come back to this topic in a moment. Erwan, it brings us again, I think, to the topic that the automatism needs to be completed by manual services that are somehow also offered by such a platform. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, if you have the example that John gave, if you are editing and doing some voiceover on your video when you're back home, then the transcription will be almost fully accurate. It will be just a small corrections here and there. Then the automated translation is better and better. It depends on the topics. It depends on the engine you activate, and then the platform has to be collaborative. So you have a network of people you trust, translators, professional translators, who can correct and do the before publishing, who can validate fast. So it's all about the two time consuming about captioning. It's transcripting and putting the time codes. On that, automation is really saving 70-80% of the time. And automation we see, not for all, we have to be careful, we have to have this human validation still, I would say. And I think it's a good thing. or to reformulate. For example, if you do an interview and people hesitate or begin a sentence and skip, you have to reformulate. Otherwise, captioning is really not very nice to read. Another thing I wanted to mention about captioning, there were some studies, scientific studies, that show if you put the sound plus the subtitling, even in your own native language, you keep the message more. I mean, for e-learning, e-learning is a huge application for transcription and subtitling and multilingual subtitling. So if you have the sound plus the text, your brain is more, several parts of your brain are recording. Accessibility is also a big, we spoke about search engine, but accessibility to hearing impaired is a big challenge. It's like 10% of the population, more or less worldwide, I mean, roughly. So social media, e-learning, education, awareness campaign, the administration have more and more obligations to make all their content accessible. And with the time we are in, we see that video is all over. On the fly, live, it's still challenging. It's coming. But we can expect in a near future, it's a small delay and then a synchronization, because the broadcast experience on TV channels, you have this delay, which is very annoying for all audiences, hearing impaired or not. You can't read on the lips and follow with the text. So with internet, we can get the video flow, do the transcription and eventually the translation, and resynchronize and put on air a synchronized video with the subtitles.
Let's leave the area of subtitling for social media purposes a little bit, as we have Oliver with us here in the studio. One of your core competencies outside the media industry is especially in corporate business. Could you give us some examples for use cases where transcriptions are used today?
Well, in fact, what I'd like to show you, I brought an example, and it's actually a challenge. It's a challenge to Mediawen, because it was talked about that things need correction. Now, I don't know if you can see the screen. It's the GUI. The file, Jana, if you just start the file, you can see it's the world premiere of the Porsche Taycan. Now, I'm not quite sure if you can hear the sound. That's Mark Webber doing the introduction. That's one of our clients, Porsche, and what we're doing is, we run their media archive, and we also run their publishing, which is web publishing primarily, but there's lots of other things. So one of the things we do is their world premieres and all of their car launches, which are really big events, majorly important. They're held all over the world, but as you can imagine, it's a German company. Lots of the people there speak primarily German. They'll speak English as well. They'll have on-site live translation. But at the end of the day, you're going to have German and English. So we just saw Mark Webber doing the introduction there. Now, what I'd like to show you very briefly is, Jana, if you'd scroll down, we actually run that video live as it comes in through the stream. And we do magic on it. I'm not going to explain that. It's technical stuff. And we basically transcript it immediately by a chunking process, etc. It's practically live. We have a delay of about 5 seconds to do the transcripting and do translation. And we come out with the entire wording of what Mark Webber and all the people have said there. And we can do that in pretty much any language we'd like. And we remix it back to the video signal. We hold up the live stream for about 5 seconds, remix it, put it out as subtitles, or if you like, actually read out, text to voice mechanisms. Now the challenge is, because we're doing this live and we're doing it for a big corporate brand, we need better transcription. We need better translation. The process of doing it live it's not a choice. It was said before, we still need to do it with a little bit of delay because all the we need verification. Is what's being read by the machine actually correct? We need a set of eyeballs and a couple of hands on it. That's great if you're not in a rush. For a global live event, for a global brand, that's just not an option. You need good quality, and it needs to come out of the machine because nobody can type that fast. So the challenge really goes to people like Mediawen to be able to come up with processing machines that actually are able to read out, and we can identify a single microphone, so we'll get a very clear and crisp sound. The speakers will be told you have to speak slowly and carefully and pronounce it well, so the quality is of the input is good enough for the machine. But that's really what we do. So, Joanna, if you just go back to the top of that file, we do all sorts of wonderful technical tricks to individual files and all the commentary to it. We of course also do technical stuff. But what we're looking to do, and we're quite close, is to basically have the president of Porsche Inc. do his global launch of the next big car. And he speaks excellent English, speaks German, of course, but we want him to speak almost live, perfect Chinese, because that's one of their biggest markets. How rude not to talk to your customer in their own language. And AI is there. AI should be able to do the job, and we're quite close. We've got the technology to make that happen with the media files, with the playout, etc., etc. So we're tweaking and we're twisting, and we're looking for people like Mediawen to deliver the tools that really give us 100% of what's possible, and it will probably not be 100% accurate as if a professional human does it, but we're getting pretty close, and we're about to launch it, and that will open up a whole new game in the media monetization business.
So you are pointing especially then for such live events towards speech synthesization.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big market, and it will spill over into social media, it will spill over into what John was talking about, journalism, basically anything that's time critical. And there's so much of it.
Yeah, so as we have Fereidoon here with us, who's, let's say, one of the players here in our team, especially for the media industry, I would like to ask you, subtitles are existing in TV since a long, long time, especially for movies in the very past. Since a while, that's also available for video on demand, a kind of logical consequence. Would you say that an automatic creation is possible, especially for live TV?
The automation and automatic creation of the subtitle is possible for live TV. What's interesting is that, particularly in the United States, it is a mandate by FCC, Federal Communications Commission, that all the content that's being delivered, whether live or VOD, has to have subtitle and caption. And so that really adds the burden for the broadcasters to make sure that all of their content is captioned and is available. And the role Venera Technologies plays in verification of the captions on the file-based side, not on the live stuff, but on the file-based, for all the VOD, for all the streaming, for all the content recorded that through the processes before have been subtitled, and it needs to be delivered as a file. So the role we play is the QC of that content and that caption to make sure everything lines up and everything's proper.
Erwan, earlier you mentioned the text-to-speech as, let's say, the reverse to the transcriptions. Could you explain a little bit more in detail what happens there? Because as we just spoke about what Oliver said, what Fereidoon said, this is all referring to that. Please fill us in with a little bit more technical background information.
Well, it's the third chapter. When you receive a video, first you have to do the transcription. We talked about it. Then, when it's fully accurate, you do the translation, you validate, and then you can transform this subtitle in Chinese in a Chinese voiceover. It's not dubbing in the broadcast sense that it's not yet lip sync. So it's more voiceover mode, like for journalists, for medias. And you can have in the background the original sound covered by speech synthesis. So a transformation from a text to a speech, the reverse from the speech to text for transcription. what we see, we began almost 5 years ago at the beginning of Mediawen. I remember doing Ginny Rometty, CEO of IBM in Spanish, and it was pretty fun to show her a convention speaking with a speech synthesis. What we see is that the quality is more and more amazing. I have no other words. I mean, the quality is really impressive. And in some fields where you need reactivity as journalism or news, etc., or in some fields, industries where you don't have the budget to do some human recording, such as e-learning I mentioned before, or education, this transformation of the subtitle into a speech can also extend the access to other audiences. I was in India 2 years ago. We have great expectations. They have 23 official languages in India. If you don't read, or if you don't know how to read, or if you are visually impaired, having access to video content for education. In Europe too, we have many people not able to read really fluently a text. So it can enlarge your audience, give more accessibility. And again, the voices are really amazing. We can mix, at Mediawen we have technologies to mix different portfolios, a male, female, two males, two females voices, and to give an experience as close as possible to the traditional experience we have from TV or from movies.
By the way, as you just mentioned, females and males, and so it points also to the question about what happens if there are multiple people talking, because we started with what happens if you record material with an app, what obviously often means there's one person talking in front of the camera. What I've seen from my experiments in the past, that moment when I have a movie with 5 people talking, things are not that easy anymore.
No, if there is a lot of people cutting direction, it's hard. But if you have different speaker, you can have, during the captioning, during the transcription and the translation, you can have speaker identification, and then we automatically allocate a specific voice to this speaker. So we can automatically allocate the right voice to the right person. Another thing that we see in text-to-speech, a strong evolution, is an extension of the portfolios and a localization of the accents. If you go in India again and you speak British with a British accent, you may not be understood. So you have English with an Indian accent or with a Canadian accent. Same for French. If you go in Africa, French-speaking African countries, if you speak with a Parisian accent, it can be almost reluctant for some audiences. Same for Spanish in South America, etc., etc. So we see that on speech synthesis, the evolution is better and better quality. Every semester we see improvement, and more accents, portfolios, and capacity to give a quality experience.
Oliver, could you give us examples for metadata that is created by identifying the speakers?
It's a rights thing, for example. If you actually know who the speaker is, I mean, obviously that's worth a lot, because if you have the Chancellor Merkel speaking, you'd like to know that, because that's part of the metadata that you're going to publish, because people tend to look for those sort of terms. So the ability to identify who's in the video, never mind if they're speaking or not, which could be face recognition, could be voice recognition, anything that will tell me what's going on is super beneficial, and there's lots of usages for it. Just to tie into what was just said, being able to identify different speakers in different situations and assigning them certain voices. For the example that I brought with Porsche in the live event, Mr. Blumer, the boss of Porsche, would like to sound his voice but speak Chinese. So knowing who he is, just from the audio analysis, could be very beneficial.
John, do you have other examples from your background, more in marketing, for instance?
Yeah, well, there are several examples there. In marketing, you see a lot of voice overing on images, where, and this is what Erwan already said, you need for accessibility in, for instance, narrowcasting environments. You also need, it has nothing to do with impaired, but just in the situation where you can't use audio, you need to have a caption underneath it. And so you see in marketing, you want to communicate, because communication is conversion is sales in this area. And this is very flat. But that's why you see that influencers are putting a lot of effort in having captions created under their videos, because it is interaction with an audience where they get paid for. We also see some examples in the healthcare area. In the healthcare area, you have, for instance, the TV screens, the video screens that you might see in the hospital beds. There are 5 or 6 beds on the floor where people have to recover, and they all have their own TV. What if you could choose if you want to have headphones on, or if you want to just have audio and have everything captioned, and you don't have audio and you want everything to be captioned, then even the video sent up to your screen, sent by your kid, for instance, you can watch it and you can read what she's saying without the audio. There are so many applicable ways where you can use this in a good way. And if you have all that metadata available, that helps you make the content even more relevant and even more targeted in any way, then there's only the other discussion that might be for another session, Stefan, that if you can synthesize and if you can create so much extra data in a video, then stay away from the deep fake, because it may be abused. I've seen videos that go way beyond this, and then I see Obama telling me stories that even Trump wouldn't care to tell. So this is something that is the dark side of what we're talking about here. But that's if it goes that far, I might even come up with some new business cases that might be interesting.
You mean content validation, by simply being able to compare the what was said, the real meaning of a certain speech, for instance.
Exactly. Validation and authentication. It will be a topic that is now hot and will be hotter and hotter while abuse is increasing.
Yeah. Before we all do an outlook towards the very end of that session today, Fereidoon, I would quickly like to ask you, what are the possibilities that we have today for you as our quality control specialist to check on subtitles in general? On one hand, I think there's, let's say, formal checks that I can do. To what degree can we check the correctness of the, let's say, the transcription results, for instance?
So what we do for the QC depends on whether the content is for broadcast or for VOD, for streaming. But we provide an interactive tool that goes through the process of verification. Once all the transcription and subtitles and so on is created, and before its final delivery in the process, to make sure that this subtitle meets the requirement of the platform for which it's being delivered. Each different platform may have different requirements, so it gets to verifying, for example, how many lines of subtitles are allowed on the screen. Some platforms allow up to 3, some platforms only allow 2. How many characters on the line is allowed? The sync issues, is this subtitle in sync with the audio? Ability to look for, in some cases, profanity. So the transcription does it perfectly and transcribes everything, but a certain broadcasting facility or platform doesn't allow for profanity. So be able to detect those and automatically change them to asterisks or allow the operator to make changes to it. So those are the kind of, or in cases in which there's burnt-in text right on the screen, and the transcription comes and sits right on top of the burnt-in text, of course that will be of an issue. So our software allows the operator to verify and correct all those things before the content actually goes out.
Thank you. Now, towards the end of this session, I would simply ask all of you what you would predict is the future of transcription and translations, and also the text-to-speech. How would that change the media industry, the marketing, the social media, the e-learning, to everything what we spoke about? Can you try to give us a little bit of an idea of an outlook? Probably, Oliver, we start with you.
Well, as I said, I think it's really big. It's going to get bigger, it's going to get faster, it will get better in terms of quality. There are so many use cases because there is a very simple thought. I have a piece of content and I'd like to make it relevant to you. So if I can speak your lingo quite literally, if I can make it understandable to you, that's it. Bingo. I've got a sale.
John, what would you say?
Yes, I totally agree with you, Oliver. Relevance is the key word in commerce, but also in communication in a broader sense. So everybody who understands a piece of content, the content is created with value. And as you see that there is so much content created and shared with you that you're almost overwhelmed, then if this transcription allows relevancy to be better, then I don't have to search and I don't have to be afraid that it's not relevant for me. I only see what is really targeted on me and I understand it. So there's too much. I'm not able to filter anymore. But with this chunk of text and data that I have, the chances are that it's really useful for me to watch this and to get a hold on this. This is going to change a lot, and it's going to be hilarious in the beginning. You're going to see transcriptions and transcodings that are hilarious to read, but it's going to be better and better and better, so that at the end, even the low-end content contributors will have a acceptable quality, and therefore there is a solution in widening audiences.
Erwan, what would you add, especially probably from an e-learning point of view and from some other angles?
I see four main evolutions. First, it becomes mandatory to have captions on your videos in e-learning and on all videos on social medias. Secondly, I see that the cost for a company, for a client, to expand to other languages, new languages, even what we consider sometimes small languages, the cost is marginal once you have a good video to expand your audience. So to speak in your native language becomes really mandatory. The third evolution is what we talked about. Text-to-speech is increasing and will become more and more fashionable in a way, required. And the fourth evolution is what I would call an enriched localization. E-learning, we have a lot of PowerPoints, presentation, bullet points with text integrated in the video. This text has to be translated too. So I have to be in a video where I have the subtitles, or I can choose the voiceover. And what I see on the screen, if there are text or titles or etc., all the text also has to be adapted and translated in my native language.
Fereidoon, what would you think would happen, especially when you look at the media industry?
Yeah, as John, Erwan, and Oliver mentioned, as this grows, as the volume of subtitle and captioning grows, and that's for certain, as everyone mentioned, the notion of verifying that subtitle becomes more important. As people rely on having subtitles and captions, then the importance of it being, presented properly and being checked prior to delivery becomes more important. So everybody relies more. Everybody wants it more. It becomes, as Erwan said, it's becoming a mandate. It is already in the U.S. and it's going across the world. So the having to make sure that for the right platform, Netflix's need versus Amazon Prime's need versus some other platform, they all have their own requirement. Making sure that caption is presented properly on that for that platform becomes more and more something that's needed and required by the audience. The audience will require, would demand it.
Earlier, Oliver said he would like to challenge Erwan. I would like to do that as well. So probably for a session that we will have in a year from now, here again at Extreme Events, you can supply some technology that all of us can talk in their mother tongue, and miracle software in the background does all the nice translations. At least for my part, the result will be better.
That's for sure, but I've got to say, we don't have a year's time. I mean, we got the playout sorted out, we got the whole production process sorted out. Come on, Mediawen, do it.
So, thank you so much to all of you that have been with us here in this session. Thanks for everyone who was viewing this session. Please stay tuned here at Extreme Events. We will continue in just some minutes here in the auditorium. Bye for now.